Buddy, it's great to be back here again. Tomorrow's Friday. We're completing the book of Shemot, Parashat Pikuday. Yesterday was a very, very happy event in the family. My daughter gave birth to a beautiful girl, and we're so happy. It was also the birthday of my other daughter, Meirav, so we have a great reason to celebrate that day. Double birthdays, and today's Hey Adal. It's the birthday of a great giant of Torah, Rashi, born in 1040 in France, almost 1,000 years ago. And by the way, my mother's line, we're related to Rashi from that, her side, so it's interesting. Birthdays in the family, you can say. If there's any commentary I'm sure we'd all want to meet, that would be Rashi, the greatest commentary of all time. But let's quickly get down to a Torah lesson, and I want to raise a question. If we look at the end of the Torah, something sort of unexpected ending over here, and Moshe Rabbeinu, after coming out of Egypt and receiving Torah, and then the setback of the sin of the golden calf. Finally, the Torah talks about the setting up of the tabernacle. And if we read about that in this week's portion, chapter 40, we read about it in verse number 1 and 2. It says, God spoke to Moshe saying, on the first of the month of Nisan, set up the tabernacle. And then we see in verse number 17, it says, in the first month in the second year of coming out of Egypt, on the first of the month, the tabernacle was established, and Moshe Rabbeinu did just that. He set up the Mishkan. And after looking at all these events, we see the surprising ending of the Torah says that Moshe Rabbeinu, after doing all the work of setting up the Mishkan and all the days, as we all know, there were the days of Miluim, the special days of putting together, taking it apart, and all the things that went into building the tabernacles we read about in the book of Shemot, collecting all the different gold and the silver and the copper and the colors and all that, and all those Bezalel and everyone that was involved in building the tabernacle of Israel and all that. And you'd expect the ending of the book of Exodus to be something like Moshe Rabbeinu enters the tabernacle and does a prayer or begins the service. But here we see in verse number 35 of the portion, V'lo yochol Moshe lavo el oel moed. He can't enter the tabernacle because the cloud was there and because of God's glory. So that seems to contradict, the fact that on Mount Sinai that wasn't a problem for Moshe Rabbeinu with the cloud and with the glory. Midrash say there was a pathway made for him to enter the mountain. Whatever it is, it's a strange kind of ending for the book of Exodus. Because you think about it, coming out from Egypt and all the terrible things and becoming a nation, we figure that now we're reaching the height of being able to enter the sanctuary, which is now the place where God's presence resides. And that would see much more suitable ending. But right away, in next week's portion, we're going to read Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, and God calls Moshe Rabbeinu to enter the sanctuary. Right? So you can say right away there's sort of a response to this, and there Moshe Rabbeinu enters. But he has a difficulty here. And why does the Torah choose to end it this way? With Moshe having a difficulty to enter the tabernacle. And I thought of an idea that we can learn from this concept, is that we all know very, very well that there's a beautiful midrash that talks about, maybe I can mention some of it, about regarding the month of Nisan. The tabernacle was completed on the month of Nisan. And it says on that day was the day Shebo nitbaser Avraham Avinu b'Yitzchak. That was the day that Abraham was revealed about Isaac. And that was the day that Israel came out of Egypt, as we all know. That was the month we're talking about, not the day, but the month. That was the month where our mothers, the matriarchs of Israel, became pregnant. That was the month that Israel is going to be redeemed in, a very powerful month. And our rabbis say that the 7 days of preparation which led up, from the end of the month of Adar, the Kav Gimel Adar, this month, there were 7 days, as we all know, which preceded Nisan, which was the month of the 8 days of Miluim. There were 7 days beforehand. On the 22nd, they began to set up the Mishkan, and then every day Moshe Rabbeinu would, as we all know, would take it apart and put it together again. And on the 8th day, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, he placed it and he didn't take it apart anymore. This was that great day we're talking about, the end of the portion here. And our rabbis teach us, I'm quoting a midrash now, that there were 10 crowns that were given to that day. And one of them was that it was the first day of creation. Sunday is the first day of creation. It was the first day of the months. It was the first day of the priesthood. It was the first day of divine service. It was the first day from fire to come down from the heaven. It was the first day of the divine presence to shine in Israel. It was the first day to bless Israel. It was the first day of eating the special kodeshim, the holy items. It was the first day of the nesiim, of the princes. It was the first of the bamot, right? The bamot we know until we build our final sanctuary in Jerusalem. So that was the first day that you couldn't, we had a temporary now sanctuary, so you could no longer offer offerings on the bamot, like with the high places, because now we had one special place. And it goes on to say, B'yom hashmini kara Moshe, and on the 8th day, God calls out to Moshe Rabbeinu, and that was the Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And here it ends with a beautiful expression, V'oto hayom haya simcha yitera. It was a great rejoicing day before God, as a day that the heavens and the earth were created. That's the end of the midrash over here, that this day was literally like the day of creation. And that right away gave me this understanding of the question that I asked. That what if we know about creation? It's brought down in the Aliyah Kadosh, our great esoteric teacher. Ali says that when God created the world, before he created the world, the entire world was filled with God's light. And it's literally like you can say that's the kavod, that's like the glory of God's presence. The light of Hashem, there was no room for anything. Literally no room for anything. And God, what he did, God had to do was we call retract himself. Of course, this is all spiritual things, right? And it's all of the spiritual worlds, and he retracted himself to make room for creation of the universe. That was what we call the tzimtzum in Hebrew. And that was a very important, that was like the foundation of creation, right? To make room, and within that space that was now created, God drew a line, and in that line, all of creation was within that line. And these are, of course, again, it's just a expression of deep parables of understanding, metaphors, but things are very deep to understand what these metaphors mean. But there was a process of making room for creation. And there are many ways to explain that. But taking this concept and bringing it exactly to the end of the Torah now, the end of the book of, not the Torah, but the end of the book of Exodus, where Moshe Rabbeinu now could, if it was all done, and the great day of happiness and rejoicing, Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't enter the tabernacle. And that literally reminded me right away of the first day. What our rabbis say was like the happiest day, like when God created what does it say? It was this happiness of creation. Because now God's light totally filled that mini tabernacle was like the mini cosmos. And it was totally filled with God's light. There was no room for Moshe Rabbeinu to enter. So God actually repeated the creation process by having to make room for Moshe Rabbeinu to enter that special place. And we read about it next week as God calls out to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's like hinting to the fact that we know it's a small aleph in the in the Hebrew letters. If you look in the Torah, so there's like the aleph is sort of mentioning, it's a small aleph there, brought down. It's sort of hinting to God, to what's it called, to God, tzimtzum, contracting himself in a, of course, spiritual sense, and allowing to make room for Moshe Rabbeinu to enter. And that's one way, of course, and a very deep way of looking at this whole concept, that after all that work was done, and it was still, it was like a sort of repetitive process of creation. It was a new creation of our tabernacle. This just shows the importance, the greatness, of course, of our temple and our tabernacle when God's light comes down to the world. And we forget, and that's a problem with all of us and human beings, we forget too much. And to realize that we now have the holiest place on the universe is the Temple Mount, our holy place for our third temple will be rebuilt. And when that is done, that same happiness, the same creation of the universe will repeat itself again. We built our third temple, and God's presence returns there. And we can think about how much the world is lacking today. When Israel, the world should be coming, the rabbis say if the world knew what the temple would bring to the world, they would today come and build our temple. They would be running for the building of our third temple, because we see that, this is literally what brings down the presence of Hashem in a concentrated form. God's everywhere, of course, but something very special about that holy of holy place of ours, because once the temple was set in Jerusalem, there's no other place holier than that. There, God's presence will reside forever, and we are awaiting that moment to return, that moment of happiness and rejoicement. Here in the month of Adar, we can read about this, the month of happiness, to remind ourselves what true happiness is when God's presence will reside in that location. And that's really, one way of insight of looking into this ending of the book of Shemot, realizing, wait a second, I think a reminder in a way, Moshe Rabbeinu can't enter until God now makes room. We have to take that in our lives and many things. We have to make room for things. We can learn it another way of saying, let's make room for somebody. Sometimes people, you can learn ethical teaching here. Sometimes people are so, with arrogance, they don't make room for others. We have to learn here also moral code of how to make room and for others to enter our lives, to always have room for other people to enter your circle. And that's God teaching us a lesson of modesty, to contract and to allow others space. And that's very, very important. And with this message, let us have a beautiful Shabbat. And it should be a special week as Adar gets going. The happy days get stronger and stronger as we approach the height of Purim and then the forced Passover. These are very happy months of redemption. And we so badly need it. We feel the need greatly for redemption with everything that's going on. Shabbat Shalom, B'sorot Tovot, Yeshuot v'Nechamot.